Okay, so it's Andrew here from Mortgage HQ. I've got Rawdon, and he's with Barfoot and Thompson. Might recognize him from the TV. Switched careers in the last. Well, when did you switch careers?
Well, about 5 years ago, I left TV world and I ran a business for 4 years or 3.5 years. But that was based in events and media training. And the lockdown in March of 2020 killed that almost within an hour.
Yeah.
um, but I had been thinking about moving to this world anyway. So when it was announced, I was in Fiji and at an event, and I rang Peter Thompson, who's a mate of mine, and said, "Right, I'm coming on board if you'll still have me." And yeah, so that was a year and a half ago.
Good coup for them. So you've been with Barfoot and Thompson for a while now. You know, in terms of real estate careers, not all agents make it, and it's clear to me that your listing success has shown that you know what you're talking about. So how do you think the next 3 months is going to play out? Maybe even up to 6 months in terms of the property side of things.
It's 3 weeks ago I was giving clients the advice, or 2 weeks ago even, certainly 3 weeks ago, saying sell before Christmas, because the banks, I think we know how tough it's going to be in the new year to borrow.
Yeah.
And that put to the side the interest rate rise. That's something at least that people and buyers can process and manage for themselves. What they can't process and manage is the lack of appetite banks will have to lend. That would have been my advice 3 weeks ago. However, the market in the last 2 weeks has tapered really quite quickly. So now my advice has been, and we're too close to Christmas anyway, so now my new listings I'm lining up for January and February to get them pretty early in the new year, because I think we will have, I think it still will be a seller's market when we come back from Christmas. I don't know how long that's going to last, because as I just said, the pressure on buyers from the banks is only going one way. And from what I've heard from talking to professionals like yourself, is the banks haven't really got anything they want to. Well, they've got it, but they don't want to lend it.
Yeah, and there's debt to income ratios voluntarily being brought in. There's interest rates going up. There's the new triple CFA rules making the lending criteria, but no, they're definitely going through details a lot more than they used to, and they used to go through details a lot. So I think that maybe they're being tough now, tougher than they envisaged they might be, because they want to show good behavior. So hopefully it does open up for borrowers next year. But I do agree that sellers market shifting into buyers market might happen just because of so many factors adding up on each other.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that you're seeing the listings, monthly new listings is going up and going to keep going up for a while.
I think so. And what we've noticed at the auctions, which is of course still the preferred method of selling for most people in this seller's market, but what we're finding at the auctions now is that we're still selling them, but the rates have gone from like 85% clearance down to 60% clearance in 2 weeks or a month. And we're having to negotiate with our vendors during the auction to bring their reserves down, potentially to meet the market more, rather than this expectation which has been there for a large chunk of this year, that buyers are just going to compete until the reserve is met. And by and large, the vendors are bringing their prices down, their reserves down, not to ridiculous levels, but they know in order to get the sale now, they're going to have to be slightly more realistic. And that's something we've noticed literally in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, there's definitely still buyers. And even if you've got one buyer, it's enough. You just need to make sure you don't scare them off.
Yeah, the FOMO, the fear of missing out from buyers, tends to have been replaced very quickly by a fear of paying too much. I genuinely believe they've realized there's, suddenly there's stock, choices to be made. And I've been one buyer who I've been helping for the last couple of weeks find a house, because, and we might end up talking a bit about how the Barfoot system works, where we can sell each other's properties. So it means we work with buyers actively, not just with our listings. And we 3 weeks ago, we're looking at not very many. And then literally this week, we've been looking at quite a lot of properties, and they've all got prices on now because they've passed an auction.
It's great. Yeah, I see that as a trend as well. As definitely prices going up, which I think is actually better for the market. It's not as good for agents, but it does mean transactions are more likely to happen with people being probably less like auctions do scare people away. So if you can make negotiations happen, then that's good.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot of agents now will be tested in their negotiation skills rather than simply getting it to auction.
Yeah, and I think that, from what I've read, you really want to work with an agent that does have negotiation skills, and that comes from experience, and that makes it tougher for the newer agents to pitch themselves other than being really available, because it's the experienced agents, or at least agents with deals under their belt. They understand how to do those deals.
Yeah, but I mean, the reality is it's just tough for new agents on every front. It's
yeah.
As you alluded to, that I've been okay. I've been selling houses for just over a year, and I've sold 30-something million dollars worth of property, so I've been fine.
Yeah.
But I do look at some new colleagues around me who in that first year still may not have got a listing, and that is really tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we'll probably see the numbers of agents drop a wee bit next year as well.
Yeah, it's a cycle. We presented to 30 Barfoot branches over a couple of years, a little while back now, and my list of agents was 1,000 long, and then you email them and you keep getting a lot of bounce backs because those people are not agents anymore. Even up to half of their agents that we met just 3 years ago, they're not active anymore. And that's just part of real estate. So what's circling around in the Barfoot and Thompson circles at the moment in terms of high level news? Just what you've been saying already. Is there anything else that's meaningful?
I think probably it's just I think look, I think it's all about are we in for a roller coaster ride in 2022, and the are we in for it tends to now be replaced by we're probably in for a roller coaster ride, based on the uncertainty of borrowing. It's really tough on buyers who this one story this week, sold a property to somebody who had sold. They had sold their property the week before for a really healthy margin, and they were downsizing, and they found the property they wanted to buy. Now, of course, the deposit is held by us for 10 working days. That's a legal requirement.
Yeah.
And so she has to go to the bank to try and get a bridging loan for a week for the deposit on her new place. And this is with the bank in full knowledge of how much her property has sold for, and how much on settlement day, or how much the deposit is, and how much and it was really hard for her to get that money. She did eventually get it, and she was able to put the deposit down on the new house, and get that loan, that bridging loan, for literally a week.
Bridging's tough because mortgage brokers don't really get paid for it. So if you get help from professional, then it might get delayed because banks don't really like doing them either. So unless you can handle bridging yourself, and it is somewhat complicated, then you really want to tie your settlements together. Otherwise, just expect to be without a house for a little bit, or you've got to buy before you sell, and that's always risky. But so what blogs and subscriptions are you following to stay up to the play with what's going on in the market?
I just sort of look. I follow Tony Alexander pretty closely,
like everyone.
like everyone, because he's great, and I like the guy. I've spent, in my years of doing events, I spent a lot of time at various conferences with him, presenting together and that sort of thing. So I'll follow him, and then really it's just following news sources very closely.
The news is the confidence, right? Whether it's accurate or not, whatever's in the news drives the confidence.
And also it drives what the vendors want to ask you, because that's where they're coming from. So you've got to know what the news is saying, and as you just said, to double guess it. And then really it comes down to just conversations with brokers, bankers, mortgage advisors, financial advisors, just personal contacts who I'll just touch base with to get their viewpoints, rather than following particular blogs. Yeah.
So
And I think it's probably because then I can just control the timing for my own information.
yeah. So what are you thinking that sellers should be doing to get the best price if they're going to list in the next 6 months?
First thing you do is you ring Rawdon Christie.
I like that. Yeah.
You can text if you want. What should you do so the advice is it's all about least outlay for best effect, I guess. It's all about presentation of the home. I did write an article fairly recently where I was simply selling the value of your home staging, for instance.
Yeah.
I'll put
it in the show notes on YouTube. That's fine.
Yeah. So I genuinely think that people have to remember, it's when you're spending money on marketing and when you're spending money on tarting up the garden maybe, or you're spending money on showcasing the house with professional home stagers or whatever, that's just investment. It's not this is the thing I try and do with vendors, is to make them look at this not as a cost.
Yeah.
The cost is what you pay us at the end of the day for actually achieving the sale. Everything before that is just investment, and like everything, as long as you're wise with it, the more you're willing to invest, potentially the bigger the return.
Yeah, and I gotta stress that it comes down to trust in the agent. Is
100%.
if you're gonna employ someone or contract someone to sell your property and you're gonna pay them a lot of money, then you should be trusting what they're doing and saying to get the deal done. And if they're saying, hey, you need to spend $5,000 on this and $2,000 on that, and we should delay this by a week, and you're letting them direct a sale, and you should trust, even if you're not sure, is they're the expert, and they wouldn't suggest things if it didn't make sense.
And that's why brand is so important with agencies. See, I often say to people, I know the agent is important, but first of all, try and choose the agency which you want to represent yourself. And then within that, then actually look at the agent. And the things you want to look out for straight away are which agency allows their agents to potentially take a commission on a marketing product or a discount from a marketing company. Because as soon as they're doing that, then they've got a they've no longer really got impartiality.
Yeah,
Go to an agency who says no, any discount gets passed on to you as the vendor. It has to.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Oh, look, I'm a big fan of the Barfoot and Thompson model. Maybe we can go over how buyers can put their best foot forward, and then we can talk about Barfoot and Thompson in general.
Yeah, so I would say so what I tend to do with most of my potential clients is when I sit down and look at the sort of the sales plan as such, before they commit to using me, I'll try and give them 3 options of a budget, let's say, for marketing. I'll tell and they'll be based on, this is the very minimum you have to spend, versus this is a good outlay which is always going to cover off full digital and social media, because that's the key.
Yeah.
Then the third one and this of course depends. I mean, if we're talking about a $5 million property, it's slightly different. But for let's say an average, let's say a $1.5 to $2.5 million property, the third one is the one where you say, now let's introduce some print, because that's the expensive outlet. And then it's up to them. They can then make that decision about where they feel. And again, they'll sort of say, well, what do you think? And I'll say, well, actually, you've got to cover off digital. You've got to cover off social media. I found quite a good deal, let's say, with Property Press. So maybe you'd consider putting that extra $1,500 towards that. And then you balance it out.
Yeah, you don't know where your deals are going to come from. You've got to do 3 options is the right way to go for pitching clients, and they should be asking which one should I take. And maybe the marketing is going to become a lot more important than it has in the past, because it's been such a strong demand. If you've got somebody with more marketing nous than another agent that doesn't, if you as an agent can come up with marketing angles that are somewhat unique to you, then you can create a strategic advantage for yourself. And I'm sure you're aware there's dozens, if not hundreds, of ways agents can do marketing.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, often I'll talk video, because of my TV background, something which I might be able to potentially put together a video which will utilize that experience. Another one which I always find interesting is the number of agents who they'll, let's say you have your property press for 3 weeks and the advert looks exactly the same for 3 weeks.
Got to change it up.
Change it up, change the photo up, change the text up. But if it needs to be changed, so that's just down to how much detail and how much work an agent wants to put into it.
Yeah. So how do Barfoot agents work with buyers?
So the great thing about our network, and this is genuinely, it makes it, when you go in to pitch to a client to win the listing, I know it sounds as though it's a sales pitch and that you're going to go and meet the Ray White agent and the Bailey's agent and the Harcourt's agent as well, and then you make your decision, and each of us will have our own strengths. But the beauty of the Barfoot system is that we're not a franchise system, so you're not necessarily giving the listing to one office who's a separate business from the office, from the same brand in the next suburb, and therefore wants to keep all the income from that particular deal. We're listed, but we're a company with 1,500 agents across Auckland and Northland, and all of us are allowed to sell each other's houses. In fact, we're encouraged to, because at the end of the day, our job is to get the vendor the best price. So when I get a new listing, the first thing we do is we send it out to all the branches nearby over the whole of the Eastern Bays, and then we invite all those agents to come and see the property before it goes to market. So
what do they call it? Caravan, is it?
Yeah. It's a great part of our sort of every Tuesday morning we get presented with all the new listings for the week. And I'll sit down and go, well, I think I've got buyers I know who are looking for this home and they're looking for that, and that could be interesting to see. And then I'll go and see all of the ones my office is selling anyway. And we spend the Tuesday morning just going around all these properties.
You know what you could do if you're allowed? Make videos for all those houses and that promote yourself with those properties. That would be cool. You can boost that on your social. I don't know if you're allowed to do it like that, but that would be cool.
But and then the next part of the puzzle there is or the solution rather, is the lockbox system. So again,
that's pretty cool too.
So so every property we list has got a key sitting on site, and any agent in Barfoot's can use the phone, dig into the app, and open the property.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is make sure that you're not, that you're going at the times allowed. Yeah,
I really want to stress the value of that. So if you're a buyer, you find yourself a Barfoot agent that you trust and you want to work with, you identify properties that you're keen on, and instead of waiting for the open homes, you work with your buyer's agent, you pick the times that work. So instead of Saturday, Sunday, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock open homes, you can say to someone like Rawdon, you say, hey, Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m, let's go and visit 6 houses. And you do it together. Yeah. And it really is like having your own personal buyer, and the vendor essentially pays for it. So it's a free service for you. I don't know if you're charging fees for this, and maybe that will change in the future, but basically getting a free concierge service that takes you to see what you need to see.
Yeah, and it is so effective, and and it's exactly what you just said. You might have 2 days. One couple who came to me, a friend of mine had a colleague at work who was struggling. They were about to have to, the settlement day for their property was coming up. They were about to be kicked out onto the streets, and they couldn't find a house. And they'd looked everywhere, and they bid on auctions all over the place. So my mate said to his colleague, give Rawdon a ring. And that was on the Thursday. We then spent Friday and Saturday, we went and saw 6 properties.
Yeah.
By Sunday evening, there was an offer on the table and it had been accepted.
Fantastic, right? It's a perfect result.
In 3 days. And they hadn't, and as you say, so those properties, they hadn't seen them. I said to them, so the first thing I'll do with a buyer is I'll sit down and say, right, what's your wish list? Internal access garage, 4 bedrooms, a yard, a swimming pool, whatever it is, walk-in wardrobes. And then we'll talk about maybe locations, pretty important as well. And then I'll go away, I'll go into the database, and then I'll flick them, as I just said, half a dozen properties, and they'll go, no. Oh, that could be the one. Let's go and see it.
Yeah.
it
And
comes.
sometimes the photos don't do it justice, right? You need somebody that's not emotionally involved to say, hey, look, this is actually a good one, and these are the reasons why. You might have overlooked it. And
Or they may, or I mean, there was one party, they have 3 dogs.
yeah.
And a lot of cross leases don't allow for 3 dogs.
Yeah.
So their issue is they don't actually know what the title looks like.
Hmm.
So again, we can have access to that stuff in the system, or we've got the limb. So we're going to go through all that stuff.
Yeah.
And make sure, actually, no, these are freeholds, so you'll be all right with your dogs, or this is a unit title, so no, you're not probably not going to allow children, let alone dogs. So it's
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of a headache, and the money comes from the commission, from the vendor's commission. It just gets shared, the seller's agent and the listing agent.
Yeah, it's something like 1% or 1.5%, or is it half? I don't know how it works. It's negotiated, right?
It depends on whether it's an auction property or whether it's a negotiated sale. So it depends. As the buyer's agent, you get a bit less for an auction property because
there's less work. Yeah, and this is why when it goes, the market's shifting into a negotiation market, there's less focus on auctions, even when the auctions close without a result. If you have a buyer's agent on your side, you don't feel like you've got to negotiate with a vendor's agent and create conflict. You can send your buyer's agent in to do the dirty work for you, and you'll find that the buyer's agent, the vendor's agent, they've got like a mutual goal is to get a sale at a fair and reasonable price. And that's like lawyers representing defendant, and in court, there's a higher chance of a deal getting done because there's more candor that can be had between those agents. So
100%. And also the other thing is that if you're negotiating, I don't know, a variation on the settlement day or something, day, it's a lot easier if agents are talking to each other about that, where it's because, and as you just said, you're impartial, you're objective, it's part of the business, rather than a buyer and a vendor sort of trying to second guess each other and they're getting an advantage over me this way. No, it's explained for them. So
so from my point of view, what I do see is a lot more listings coming into the market in the next couple of months, and as a buyer, it's not going to necessarily be easier. There might be a bit more choice that might not actually be helpful for you. But the method of sale, I feel like properties will still sell quickly because it might be negotiation or a listed price, rather than when they, at the moment, what's happening is property will get listed, there'll be an auction in 4 weeks' time. And generally speaking, unless the auction's brought forward, you've got 4 weeks to figure it out. I think there's going to be a lot of properties that get listed that sell a lot quicker because of it being negotiation and a price. So as a buyer, there might be more choice, but you're still going to have to be quick.
You are, and as a vendor, you're going to have to be realistic. And that's always the tough part of our job, actually in any market, is to just keep expectations in check.
Yeah, I mean, fair price is a fair price, and if you get a little bit more than that or a little bit less in the grand scheme of things, as long as you're able to achieve what you're trying to achieve, not a big deal.
Yeah.
Right, Rawdon, I'll let you get back to it, but if you think of anything you want me to add in the show notes, just let me know. And what are your main suburbs of focus?
I'm very Remuera focused, but I've sold from Te Atatu South to Aoraki, quite a few in Remuera focused, out to Pakuranga. And that's the thing, because we can work as this buyer's agent, we'll work with people across the city. But as far as listings go, they tend to be Eastern Bays.
Nice.
Mount Wellington, sold one there recently. Remuera, Mount Wellington, Aoraki, Koe, Newmarket, Epsom. That's the sort of patch.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm sure if anyone's keen, they'll get in touch. You might get a lot more buyers than sellers at the moment, but hopefully 1 or 2 sellers, eh?
Yeah. And I do sell all over Auckland. I don't mind. Quite happy sitting in the car.
Cool. All right.
Thanks. That's good. Yeah, nice to have a chat, and happy Christmas to everyone. I hope everyone has a good summer.
Oh, you too, man. Cheers.
Cheers, bud.
Bye.